Hi, Jan.
Good evening.
Hi, Mateo.
Hello,
Waiting for Bob.
Scott. Is that you?
I don't think that's Scott Kahn.
Would
Scott is his his air flights got delayed. So if he's gonna join, it's gonna be later. Are you trying to find out who Scott is?
Yeah, so there are a few people that, for the purpose of the minutes, I'd like to ask if they could identify themselves. The person identified as Scott.
Hi, Scott Merzbach from the Gazette.
Thank you very much. The person identified as, let me see here, Mike S.
Mike Stotts, 26 Flake Drive.
Great, thank you. And Arlie.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, hi. I'm Arlie Gould. I'm from Amherst. But I got a notice that you were going to discuss some interesting things, so I came.
Rinky, would you mind identifying yourself for the minutes? Rinky, are you there? Okay. Rita's iPhone. Is that Rita Farrell?
All right, I see Bob is here. Mateo, did you get everybody you needed?
I didn't hear from Rinky, and I'm wondering, I'm assuming iPad is not Joseph's last name. Joseph, do you mind identifying yourself for the purposes of the minutes?
Joe Salvador.
Thank you very much.
Can you give me a mic check?
Yeah, I hear ya.
Yeah, for some reason my work computer um video is not working, so I apologize. You'll be robbed of my presence.
That's okay. We can hear you. That's all that matters. So, all right, we have a quorum. So I'm going to call this meeting to order at 7 p.m. on December 12th, 2024. This is a meeting of the Shutesbury Conservation Commission. Calling it to order. This meeting is being recorded. I see somebody has their hand up. Can I?
Hi, yep, this is Jill Buchanan. I'm sorry, it's listed as Dave, but my computer's not connecting right now. So I just wanted to ask if it's possible to bring up a couple of questions at some point in this meeting.
Yeah, so we will run through a lot about how this meeting is going to be run, but right now, just let me get going. Bob Douglas, who's with us right now, is going to have to leave at some point. So I'd like to get some work done. So first I'd like to approve minutes. So let's see, we've got some minutes from July 18th, 2024 and November 14th, 2024. Jan and Bob, have you guys had a chance to look at the minutes?
I have.
Great.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the minutes.
Second,
I second.
Douglas,
Aye.
Rowan,
Aye.
and Wilson. Aye. All right, the next thing I'd like to try and get done before Bob has to go is actually an item number 8 on our agenda. which is the extension request for the permit for the drawdown of Lake Wyola. And I think Adrian Dunk is here. Oh, yeah, great. Hi, Adrian.
Yes, I am. Hello, good evening, Commission. For the record, I'm Adrian Dunk from GZA, Geoenvironmental, and we're the consultant for the town of Shutesbury for Lake Wyola. And we had submitted an extension request for 1 year to continue the drawdown as it's currently practiced. I was here before you in August to discuss this. But right around the time I submitted the request, the governor signed the Massachusetts Leads Act, which automatically extended currently valid orders of conditions for 2 years. So I still wanted to come before you tonight because I had submitted the request. But I think the appropriate thing would be for me to rescind my request and have the order will stand now until January 20th, 2027. Is that your
Yeah.
interpretation, Beth?
Yeah, yeah, and I
Okay.
sent information around to the commission about the Leads Act. I also spoke with DEP with Mark Stinson just to make sure that other commissions are already using it, because there's guidance, I guess, that will come out from DEP, but I just want to make sure that it was a common thing already, and it is.
Okay.
So yeah, that's what I think, and I think you had mentioned sort of like a confirmation letter that we
Is
could.
that, yeah, I think that that would be ideal just for the town's record so that
Yeah.
if, I know that you currently have an interim town administrator so that in a year, we don't all go like, what did we do last year? If we could just get a letter that says, per the Leads Act, it was extended. Here's the current expiration date, that would give everybody peace of mind.
Yep, that sounds perfect.
Okay.
Commissioners, do you have any questions?
I do. Adrian, so just so I'm clear on this, I heard about this recently, that if you have an active permit during a certain time period, then it is automatically extended 2 years. Is that correct?
Yes, my understanding is any valid orders of conditions, other state permits, so 401 water quality certs, Chapter 91 licenses or permits, if they were valid between January 1st, 2023 and January 1st, 2025, for any time during that window, they are automatically extended for 2 years.
Great, thank you. That's very
Um,
helpful.
It very specifically doesn't include enforcement orders. Those get no leeway.
Okay.
Right.
And question perhaps for Beth. If something is permitted under both the Shutesbury bylaw as well as the Wetlands Protection Act, is that also extended for that time period?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's very helpful. I appreciate that, Beth and Adrian.
All right, great. So I think I'm looking for a motion to, I mean, we don't really even need to vote, but let's vote. A motion to issue sort of a confirmation letter to GZA confirming that this order of conditions is being extended under the Leads Act, Mass Leads Act.
I motion to confirm and extend it to 1/20/27.
Great, second?
I will second.
Okay. Douglas,
Aye.
and Rowan,
Aye.
and Wilson. Aye. Great. Thank you, Adrian.
Great, thank you all.
Yeah, I sent you guys some info on that. The light in here is terrible. This certainly isn't the first time the state has issued these permit extension acts. The most recent one was during COVID-19. Prior to that, there was another one having to do with economic downturns back in 2012, I think it was.
Right, the Deval
Um,
Patrick economic recession. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So anyway, so this one is 2 years. And if you look through the stuff, it's for anything that got permitted during those 2 years or was even sort of active during those 2 years. So, good. How much longer do we have you, Bob?
Probably about 5 minutes.
Okay. Let's see, what else can we do? Well, I think we'll just kind of head into things that I was going to try to get some things we had to vote on done first. But I think those might be the only 2 things we can do at the moment. So I guess I would like to do my chair comments right now. One thing that's interesting is I've asked Michael DiChiara to come to our next meeting to do a presentation on the clean energy law. That's the new law that was passed in the state that has to do with solar project permitting and siting and all that. So I think he has a presentation he put together. I think he's already presented in Wendell. So he's going to come to our next meeting, which I think will be really informative for us. So that's happening. And then I wanted to go over our policy for meeting protocol. The Concom does have a policy for public comment. There's kind of 2 parts of it that I wanted to talk about. One is that, and this is how tonight's meeting and all of our meetings really should be run, is our agendas have items on them. We'll be going through the items. With each item, I will sort of introduce it. And if there's an applicant, the applicant will speak. Whoever is there on the applicant's representing the applicant would speak. Then the Conservation Commission asks questions, and then we have a discussion. And then once the Conservation Commission has really finished their discussion and their questions, then I'll say it's time for public comment. Like, are there any public comments? And that's the time when you can raise your hand and ask a question. I think the Concom in general would really appreciate it if people wouldn't raise their hands to ask questions or have public comments during the applicant's presentation, for example, or the discussion by the Conservation Commission. And that's all written in this policy that the Concom approved under the previous chair. So that's really how we would like it run, is after each item, as we go through them, we'll have chances for public comment. And then the other aspect of it is that each commenter is given 2 minutes to comment. Tonight, I'm going to have Jan timing that. So each comment's 2 minutes, and she's going to let people know when they've gone over 2 minutes. You're certainly welcome to have a second comment as long as there's time for it and as long as other people have been given a chance to make comments. So that's all I wanted to say. Just would like to have the meeting run smoothly and comfortably and fast. So, Jan, do you have any updates on us from site visits?
Yes, I do.
Great.
So, on November 17th, we visited Lucy and Joe Gold at 2 Wyola Drive. They were concerned about sedimentation in an inlet from Lake Wyola that comes out next to their house. They thought at the time when we first visited them that it was their property, but what we discovered when we were there was that in fact the property where the inlet is belongs to the town. So that launched a sort of different path of getting the town, well, gauging the town's interest and working on the problem and figuring out how that would be paid for and managed. And today we did a little follow-up there with Rita Farrell, the select board member, and she's going to bring that to the select board for a discussion, I think, next week. Okay, so then on November 19th, I visited the library construction site again. We're doing that kind of every couple of weeks. We're doing a walk around to make sure nothing, to make sure nothing has happened that shouldn't be happening. And what we observed was during that visit, we saw that the well line was installed, and they did that according to the plan. The erosion barriers have remained in good shape, except there was a couple of places where there'd been some flopping of the curtain and a little bit of undermining. So we pointed that out, and we discussed how they were going to secure the soil at that point. At that point, I discussed mulching, but we came back with hydro seeding. Then on December 3rd, we went out and had another walk around. And this time, it wasn't just Mary Ann Antonellis with me, but Penny Jakes joined us. Again, we commented on the fact that the erosion curtains are starting to show some wear. They gotta last till spring, or at least when things start to sprout. They said they plan to proceed with the hydro seeding the following day, which was right before we got that snow. And we recommended they go back and staple any of the erosion curtains that had come floppy again. So they're going to be mindful of that, I think. And just this afternoon, we visited 31 Lakeview to review the order of conditions that were completed there in order to issue a certificate of completion. And everything looked great. One of the last items that they needed to do was to put up a sign kind of warning people where the wetlands were and to stay away from those wetlands, and they have done that. So the recommendation in that case is for the chair to write that up and bring it to vote maybe next meeting. That is all.
All right, do we have any upcoming planned site visits? I think we have one, don't we?
We are going to visit, yes, we're going to visit the Kestrel Bog on December 15th at 10 o'clock to review some plans for revision to their trails there. And I'm going back out to the library on December 17th, and we'll see how that hydro seeding has held up.
Great. Thanks for keeping on top of all of that. Something I forgot to mention in the beginning of the meeting, looking at our agenda, there's a couple things that have gotten moved to our next meeting. Number 6, which is the conservation restriction for lot H151. We haven't seen the conservation restriction yet. It's not finished. Mark is working with Berkshire Design. So we haven't gotten that yet. Hopefully we'll get it before January 9th, which is our next meeting. Also, number 9, which is 32 Lake Drive. That project, the applicant couldn't come tonight. So that will also get moved to January 9th. All right. I think I'd like to move on to, what is it, number 7 is Jennifer Wallace here? Maybe she's not here yet. That was on the agenda for 7:45, but we've had to move things around so much because
Jennifer is in attendance. I don't know if they're
oh, Jennifer, are you out there?
Can you guys hear me now?
Yes, we can hear
Okay,
you.
good. I didn't know it was my turn yet.
Yeah, a little bit early, but we would love it if you would do your presentation now.
Okay, I can. Here I am. outdoors in Puerto Rico.
Oh, Puerto Rico, how fun.
I'm trying to get some light on this because the internet situation here is a little unstable. So I'm in the dark. I don't know how to make myself in the light. Is that okay?
It's fine. Yep.
I can try to, let me just, hold on. Let me try this one. I was going to do this a minute ago, thinking I had a little time, but I think I can make myself more light. Okay, let's try this. Oh boy, here I am. Much better. Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Jennifer.
You're a little
Wallace,
quiet.
and,
Jennifer, you're a little quiet. Could you increase the volume at all, or?
yeah. My volume is turned all the way up.
Okay, it's good.
Is that better?
Yeah, that is.
Okay, good. All right, sorry about the glitches here. Okay. So I'm Jennifer Wallace, and I'm the chairperson of a task force called the Lake Wyola Stormwater Erosion Task Force. And we started working this summer. Great group. And we, I don't know how many people who are on Concom have read the Franklin County watershed-based study of Lake Wyola watershed. See Janice's hand up, few people. Okay, good. So we're really using that study as our jumping off point. And when I first took a look at that study, I thought, you know, I think that this presents a great opportunity for the town and for the people who care and live around the lake to come together to see if we can get some of these things implemented. There's been a lot of studies of stormwater erosion at Lake Wyola, and they've always remained in the study phase rather than any kind of implementation phase. There've always been big challenges with that because of the, you know, the jurisdictional issues of town-owned roads, town-owned land, and privately owned Lake Wyola Association, which is a nonprofit organization ownership, and who's got responsibility and who can implement things. And the FERCOG report had a section in there about some funding options, which just piqued my interest because there were funding options there that were all about public and private partnerships. And that's when I approached the select board about whether there might be support in the town for putting together a task force that could explore what might be needed to implement some things that could improve sediment delivery to the lake, regardless of ownership of property, to start out with anyway. So that's what we've been doing. So we use the FERCOG report as a jumping off point. We have done several trips out to identify what we're calling the primary drainage systems and the discharge points to the lake. So there are, once looking at all the FERCOG recommendations, we thought, okay, let's start at the upland sites like Lux Pond Road and all the channels that deliver water and sediment into the lake, and Wendell Road. Same thing, all of those channels that deliver sediment into the lake. I think a focus for many, many, many years has always been on road surfaces, the dirt roads around Lake Wyola. And our assessment is that the road surfaces are kind of collateral, well, I'll call it this, collateral damage from drainage that starts way, I'm putting my hands up, way above them. And that we need to be able to start to try to manage the way the water travels downhill to the lake.
Sorry, I just have to make an interruption here because I think if Bob Douglas is not actually in the meeting is now out of order and it's not a legal meeting and it has to stop.
Bob Douglas is still in the meeting.
I thought, okay, my understanding was that you were leaving the meeting. Where
is that-
Bob Douglas said he had to leave the meeting.
Is that
That's
Bob
what he
Douglas?
said.
I don't know. Bob, are you there? So yeah, he may have left because he did say he'd have to leave for a few minutes, but there's no reason that you can't, meetings are allowed to go on even if you don't have quorum, as long as
That's-
it's not something that has to be voted on. This is an informational presentation by Jennifer. It's the same as having Jan talk about the site visits and me talk about other things. If it's not something that needs to be voted on, we can certainly continue a meeting without having a quorum.
Okay,
Does that answer your question?
thank you.
Yeah. Sorry, Jennifer, go ahead.
So anyway, we have identified these primary systems, and we're looking now at what funding that we were charged by the select board to make some recommendations of how to implement suggestions from the FERCog report and integrating other reports like the habitat study that was done a few years ago. There was a 2007 stormwater study, and to move that to sort of project level recommendations. Our meeting next week with FERCog will talk with them about the many questions that we have about engineering studies and funding sources and what other towns have been successful at combining public and private entities to undertake projects. The three categories of recommendations that came from the FERCog report that we're working with are, they call them breast management practices, and we are too, but we're also just calling them structural interventions. You know, things that would mean culverts or resizing culverts or repositioning culverts and whatever, water dams and things that would need construction.
Sorry, I'm going to keep interrupting just because my understanding is that if you don't have a quorum in the meeting, you cannot continue the meeting unless you have everybody at least a quorum to, if you need to take a break till Bob comes back, then you can do that, but it's not legal. It's not legal for open meeting to have less than quorum. It doesn't matter if you're deciding on anything. I just looked this up.
Yeah.
It's not legal. You're not allowed to continue the meeting unless you have quorum. So if you need to take a break until Bob comes back, then that's acceptable, but otherwise this meeting is not legal.
Well, that is not the understanding that I have about meetings, about Conservation
It's
Commission
not
meetings
open
and any
quorum, it's
public
not,
meeting.
you're not meeting quorum and it doesn't meet open meeting law, so it doesn't meet the law.
What do you mean it doesn't get open meeting law? This is an open meeting. We're talking.
It's an open meeting law needs, you need to have quorum to keep your meeting legal. You have to have quorum in order to meet the open meeting law. That's what the law says. If you'd like to look it up right now, I'm happy to wait, but this is not a legal meeting right now until Bob is here. So you know, if you want to take a break, that's fine, but otherwise it's not a legal meeting.
Are we taking a break? I think we're on a break.
I guess we're taking a break, but
So I did just look this up and it says, the meeting can only be used for informational purposes and no votes or decisions can be made. So I guess I'm not
Yes.
really sure what that means, but, given what you're saying, then I guess I will retract what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's what see too. I mean, that's what I've seen at least,
Yep,
you
okay,
know, written other places. I was right now trying to just look at the specific
Yep.
open meeting law for Massachusetts, but that's the way I understand.
okay. I retract and thank you for considering.
Yeah, sure. Sorry, Jennifer.
Okay.
I don't know if you can jump
All right,
back
no.
in or,
Yeah, I'm going to jump back in.
okay.
All right, so we are to make some recommendations to the select board about projects and funding possibilities and strategies for implementing some of these recommendations that FERCog has made. So they've made 3 categories of recommendations. One is our structural best management practices. Others are maintenance and management practices and policies, and the other is public education. It's very likely that any of the best management practices would need some kind of engineering study to make sure that things are being designed and located in the correct places to do the job that we want them to do, which is reduce the amount of sediment coming into the lake. There's also a lot of recommendations there that have to do about monitoring sediment and collecting data and those things. You wouldn't need an engineering study for that. A lot of the management and maintenance policies are those that would be implemented on town-owned roads by the town and on association-owned roads by the association or the state in the case of the state beach. And public education would be for everybody in the town who has an interest, well, or should have an interest in what happens when stormwater dumps loads of sediment into the lake. So our focus is on trying to probably prioritize some of these within these 3 categories. And we don't know yet, you know, what that will look like. Does it come in phases? You know, one big question we have is it better to get one giant engineering study grant to cover the whole watershed and what was identified, or is it better strategically to go in smaller chunks and in smaller phases? These are questions we'll be asking FERCog when they come to our meeting, which is also an open meeting on next Thursday.
Next Thursday?
Yeah, and our meeting starts at 7. It's going to be a full agenda in the sense that they have a short presentation that they're going to make to, in their words, to get everyone on the same page. Our task force and LWAC have joined together to develop a list of questions that we're interested in following up with FERCog on. Whether we get to all of those, I think is probably questionable, but we're going to leave it to them. They'll get the questions in advance starting tomorrow. I think I'm going to try to send those out. So it's pretty active. Our group meets every month, sometimes twice a month. We've done site visits. We currently are looking into the grants that FERCog developed and trying to come to some summary of recommendations that we can give to the select board next early summer, probably. There will be, and you know, it's always been on our agenda because there's multiple stakeholders here to even approve projects, right? I mean, there are going to be Concom, wetland protection related things that are going to be needed. Same thing with the nonprofit Lake Wyola Association, same thing with LWAC's involvement. So the thing that I personally am really excited about is that the select board saw the benefit of this more integrated approach. You know, it's more of an ecosystem approach than a property ownership approach. And saying, you know, based on the way water happens, doesn't care who owns the property. And and the select board, I think, was very forward thinking to say, let's see what this would look like to put these two parties that have been kind of in their own corners for a long time together to see how we could do some collective planning and problem solving. So I'm very excited about that. I think it's, you know, I don't know, I'm a little optimistic always, I think, but it's like a breakthrough in terms of dealing with some of these problems that have plagued us all for quite a long time. So I'm happy to take questions if people have them. I know it was just meant to be an update, and that's exactly what I gave, but I'll answer any questions that I can.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's all really wonderful. And yeah, you've got to look at the whole thing from the watershed perspective. Have you've seen the culvert report that FERCog did? Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a few of the places. So where we've identified, and the highway department reps were with us on our site visits, right? So we were able to identify places along Locks Pond Road and along Wendell Road that might be, you know, primary locations for water delivery down the hill to the lake. And some of those locations were identified in the culvert study.
Good.
So that's good. Not all of them, really, just two, I think. But in any case, we have that data from the culvert study as more justification for focusing on those particular places.
Yeah, and something like that is such good support for a grant application, a study like that FERCog's done. And that's all
Absolutely.
really good. And I want you to certainly know that the Concom is in support of all that work, and any grant applications, we're happy to, like, write a letter of support for,
great.
Whatever, however that goes. But that's a sort of a big task you've taken on.
Yes, it is a big task. But you know what, Mark Rivers, I see he's here, or his name is here. Mark Rivers has been working on this for, 4, 5, 6 years or more. So I feel like, I've come in now sort of riding on his coattails, and he and I work pretty closely together. And, it's just like, okay, let's get this done. And I think the people who are on the committee have the same perspective. And I think the select board had the same perspective to create this task force in the first place. So.
That's great. And
Yeah.
Just curiosity, are there certain areas that you've already identified as where you kind of want to start?
We're pretty, I would say there are at least 2 or 3 places on each of the roads that we feel are delivering more water than probably needs to be delivered down the hill and to the lake. We also have discharge points identified. Some of those were identified in the habitat study that was done some time ago, which had great actual locations where they had photographed where they're seeing discharge into the lake. So we need to now, and there were a couple of drone photographs in the FERCog final report too that showed this. So what we need to do is look at these upland sites that we've already seen evidence for water and sediment that's leaving the road and heading down to the lake, and we need to match those with these known discharge points. So yeah, I would say, well, with the exception of Fisk Brook and the North Cove, which is a whole system in and of itself that involves other jurisdictions than just Shutesbury, that's going to be a big decision for us all to make, which is, and this is something we'll discuss with FERCog, I know, which is, is it strategic to go with these, I don't know, this off the top of my head, let's say there's 4 or 5 places where we would say, here's some places for interventions that could start up on the upland side and have significant impact on what happens down below. Now, those will have to get matched with management and maintenance commitments on the part of the Lake Wyola Association and also individual homeowners. So it all has to come together. So
Mhm.
let's say there's 4, I'm just using, I'm not, don't tie me down to 4, but let's say there's 4 primary system, what I'm calling drainage systems. And then there's Fisk Brook, which is a complete, sort of nation into itself, even though that's also contributing. So that's going to be something, to work on, all of us, to figure out how best to approach that. I believe that the smaller ones could be accomplished much quicker than the large one of Fisk Brook. And it may be that they don't cancel each other out, but some can proceed while studies on the larger one are continuing. So hopefully FERCog can
Yeah.
give us some insight into strategically what's the best way to go when we meet with them. We'll probably
Yeah,
have,
you have to start somewhere,
we do,
right?
yeah. So
and to get grants, grants are not easy to get. And I think sort of the more specific areas may actually, qualify better, because I guess you're probably talking design, permitting, construction costs all together, and it's a lot, but that all sounds great.
But
Jan,
and
do
it
you
has
have
to
any
start with,
questions?
it has to start with engineering too, because, well, frankly, a lot of things are done without really the expertise to make sure that it's done, number one, the right way, and number two, forward thinking to anticipating these giant storms, and the intensity of water dumpage is different than it was even in 2007 when Scott Campbell did his study. So
Yep. Yeah, it's all really great.
Mhm.
Jan, do you have any questions?
I like the idea. I like your approach of going after the low hanging fruit, and I think then you buy in, or you get the local residents to buy in as you move forward onto the bigger problems. The Cove is going to eat your lunch. Have you engaged Wendell in the process?
I think probably Mark was involved in talking with Wendell at a certain point, but we are way not there. Really what we're doing now is trying to isolate out, the FERCog study identified what they called 7 sites, and they're pretty broad stroked, areas. We're kind of drilling down into those, well, at least 3 or 4 of those 7 sites, to go, where are the places where, where you'd start digging? Where are the places where you'd start, rechanneling water within those sites? Fisk Pond is the 7th site, and we're way not to any stage of talking to anyone yet, because we don't even have a project yet. We don't
Well,
even know what we're trying to do.
I did think the plan pointed to some things that you could look at. And part of that is there land available that is already belonging to a town or the state?
Right.
Or is there land belonging to an individual, the church camp or whatever, I don't know, where they'd be willing to put that ball into play when you get there. It would be nice to begin that kind of talk, because that's not
think you're
something that
right.
people warm up to overnight.
Yeah, right. No, I think you make a good point, and I think it's one of these, it was kind of like, here, this is my interest too, in giving an update to Concom. I'm going to give an update next week to the Lake Wyola Association. I've given many updates to LWAC, well, many, 2 or 3, but these are all the players that are going to have to play, because it is, not only is it a complicated ecosystem, but it's a complicated ownership and political structure. So I think you raise a good point, and maybe when we get a little bit further along and have been able to update the select board, it might be time to see if we can put together a coalition of these different parties that have an interest or an ownership in the Fisk Brook area.
Mhm. Yeah. My only other thought as I was reading along was when the swimming beaches close, everybody gets all knotted up, and often the state beach closes and the Lake Wyola Association beaches remain open. but we're not measuring the same bacteria. And nobody seems to want to do parallel measurements and see if one is entirely different or if they, you know, have some relationship. So it's hard to know whether what our problem is the geese that everyone blames, or dog poop, or septic tanks, or, you know, we haven't narrowed that down yet. And I think it could be done.
So this is a little bit out of the realm of stormwater runoff, unless I just want to ask, are you suggesting that stormwater and sediment delivery might have something to do with these bacteria levels?
I think stormwater very well could, whether
see.
it comes on the sediment or not.
Mhm.
You know, if you look in bigger systems like the Connecticut River, after a heavy rainstorm, the Connecticut, I forget what they're called now, the Connecticut River group that
Oh, the
protects
conservation, Connecticut River Conservation?
Conservancy.
Conservancy, that's right, the
right.
Connecticut River
Yeah.
Conservancy. They do water quality studies, and the river just lights up with E. coli. I think it's E. coli
Yeah.
Interesting.
after stormwater runoff. Well, there's a good chance that's what's happening around Lake Wyola too.
That's
you know.
interesting. Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that. I will definitely put that somewhere.
It's worth thinking about. Yeah.
It's very much worth thinking about. I keep thinking
Yeah,
of
no, that's a
sand and
very
gra-
common effect.
I keep thinking of, I keep thinking of sand and gravel, but I hadn't thought about bacteria.
There's a study that the Westfield River Watershed Association did probably 15 years ago. They did the sample studies up and down the river and found E. coli, and then they went looking for the point sources, you know, because they thought, oh, surely it's septic tanks or something, you know, quite specific. And what the very worst spot on the river was a dog park. So every time
Yeah.
it rained, the poop washed in and the stream lit up. And once they got people to pick up the poop, they solved a heck of a lot of their trouble in that area of the river. So these things seem kind of funny and minor, but you might have a real easy win there.
Yeah, it's interesting how that works. Okay, good. Thank you.
Yeah, no, that's a pretty common effect. Go after storm events is when you really do see increases in bacteria in surface waters.
Make a note of that right
There
now.
was somebody with their hand up, but I guess they just took their hand down.
It was Sue Hoyle. I don't know if she's
Sue
still
Hoyle,
here.
yeah. Sue, do you still have a question? I guess not. Well-
No, I'm here. Sorry, I'm making supper and I stepped away. Thank you for recognizing me. And thank you, Jennifer, and your group for doing what must be hours and hours of work. Really appreciate it. I'm down here at the lake and on Locks Pond. So of course I'm interested to hear if you can share the information. What are the 2 points that have been identified as the major drainage issues?
Right. So I think I won't do that just now because we have been on site visits, the committee twice. And however, we have not come.
Oh, she froze. I think you froze, Jennifer.
But you know, we were up there on the road. You kindly showed us all of your amazing channels that you have going there. And so we know that that area is one that has got to be considered. So I can tell you that for sure.
Okay.
All right, so we are open to public comment. Right now, if anybody has any questions for Jennifer. Jill, did you want to comment?
Yes, thank you. So I want to come back to this open meeting question, because I know that it's kind of unclear in this situation, but I have been looking into it a little bit more, and it feels like this is an irregular meeting to have only 2 people of your committee here. I can read you the frequently asked questions from the state website, which says, we caution public bodies about meeting when a quorum is not present. The open meeting law prohibits serial communication between or among members of a public body that reach the quorum of members outside of a noticed meeting. Thus, when subquorum discusses a topic, which is then shared with the quorum outside of the meeting, it may be considered improper deliberation. So it seems like this topic, because, you know, it's going to require some level of serial communication, is at risk of violation of laws here. So even though you could argue technically that it's acceptable, it seems irregular to have this meeting in this format. It seems like it makes more sense if you don't have a quorum to discuss things, even if it's not a formal decision being made. It's hard, like how is this going to continue on without serial discussion? So just like to raise that point.
Well, I'd have to look into it a bit more, but to me, this is just an informational session. As I said, we're not deliberating. We're simply asking some questions and gathering some information from Jennifer.
I agree. I think that is the key point. There is no deliberation occurring here. Jennifer isn't identifying anything for the commission to work on. That may come up in the future, but it isn't happening now. So I think we're good.
I guess the question is, are other topics going to be covered? Like what other topics will be covered in the meeting, or is this going to be it?
No, this is it. Bob is supposed to be coming back. He was stepping out to do a quick presentation for a few minutes and coming back. So we're going to wait for him to come back because the other topics on the agenda all involve.
Okay, that's my bigger concern, is that if the other topics, you know, would be covered, then they would need a quorum. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Bob, are you here? Guess not. It doesn't look like Scott has not joined either at this point. Nope. It's tough having a commission that has people that work full time. It's really hard. I know, you know, Bob is right now presenting for work and Scott is traveling for work. He was going to come tonight, but his flight got delayed at the last minute. So he's probably just arriving. So hopefully he might join any minute. So I see Sharon has her hand up.
Yeah, thank you. I would just like to point out that talking about the regulations for the Wetlands Protection Bylaw was on the agenda for the last Conservation Commission meeting, and it wasn't talked about at that meeting, and it's on the agenda for this meeting, and once again, it's not talked about. And about a month ago, there was a suggestion to have separate dedicated meetings to talk about the regulations. And I think that the commission knows that this issue about the regulations is extremely important to the people of Shutesbury. And so I want to really push the commission to create some really immediate dedicated meetings to deal with the regulations, as well as looking at the applicants for the Concom, because if we've had an empty seat on the Concom with very qualified applicants for a long time, and if we had filled that opening on the Conservation Commission, we probably wouldn't be having this problem tonight. So there are some really basic issues that need to be dealt with very soon that people in the town care about a lot. And so this is just to ask the present commissioners to make a commitment to really listen to the residents of Shutesbury who want these issues addressed very, very seriously. Thank you.
Yep, well, that is our plan for tonight. Bob is returning. I don't know if Scott is going to make it or not due to his airplane situation. Once Bob returns, the first thing we're gonna do is talk about the commission position that's open and have the applicants present to us. And then tonight, we are gonna decide and vote on who we're recommending to the select board. And as I understand it, the select board may be able to decide, maybe not next Tuesday. I think what Rita had told me is it would be on the agenda for the next meeting. I'm not sure it can make it onto the, oh, actually, I think she said if we could get names to her by tonight, that select board can talk about it on Tuesday, but actually Rita's on the call. Yeah, so that is the plan. We're gonna get 2 names, I think, is what we're gonna be recommending tonight to the select board. That decision will be made tonight. And the regulations, we're gonna get through as much of the regulations as we can tonight. That is also the goal for tonight. And I think we'll talk more about that when we get to it. But we have some good goals. Right now, we gotta wait for Bob, I think. I don't think there's much else to talk about until Bob returns.
I think I'll just say so long, and I want to thank the commission for being interested in what we're doing, and I'm happy to come back anytime you think that you'd like an update, or if I feel like we've gotten to some seminal point, I could say, hey, it's a good time for an update. So
Thank you so much for coming. It was
you,
really
everybody.
informational, and I was curious what you guys are up to, and I love your goals and everything that you're trying to do. And yeah,
Okay,
I mean, I
thanks.
will try to make it to some of your meetings. I'm
Please
kind of
do,
busy.
yeah.
So I might
No,
not
I
be able
guess you are, right. But I'll, I mean, we'll be in touch, and I'll keep you, Concom, everybody, informed along the way as we also move along.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't mind, I'd like to reach out, and have you come back again
Great.
with updates.
Yeah, I think the more all of us can be, on the same channel anyway, the better, because we're all
Yeah.
going to have to be involved at one level or another eventually. So
Thank you,
Okay.
Jennifer.
Right, I mean, any
Okay.
projects you guys come up with, I mean, we'd like to sort of contribute in the discussion of what the projects are, but then also certainly the permitting of them would be
absolutely. Yep.
a big part. So,
What was the
Okay.
temperature in Puerto Rico today, Jennifer?
Well, it's constantly 82, I'm sorry to say. We always come to this very small island off the main island of Puerto Rico. So
Oh,
it's
nice.
quite wonderful. I always love coming home too. I'll say that too.
Well, it's a chilly one here today. You're good to be
Right.
over there.
Okay. All right. Take care, everybody. Thanks again for inviting me.
Thanks for coming. It was great.
Okay. Bye-bye.
All right, so sorry, everyone, but we're gonna have to wait a few minutes till Bob returns.
Do we have to vote on the administrative approval?
Yeah, I think
Okay.
we should. Yeah, I let Pam know that we were gonna be delaying her project until later, so she knows.
Okay.
But I am expecting Bob back any minute.
Paul, we're paused. I don't know if you are still there listening, but Rinky, do you mind identifying yourself for the purpose of the minutes? Your last name? Diane, do you mind identifying your last name for the purpose of the minutes?
Maybe they're not listening.
Beth Donna has joined us too now.
Hey, Donna. We're waiting for Bob.
Good evening.
Good evening. Waiting for Bob so we have quorum.
Are we supposed to get through this all tonight?
Well, we've done a lot already. We have three things left, 292 Pelham Hill Road, their application, and then hearing from the applicants who want to be on the Conservation Commission and voting on that, and then going through a bunch of sections of the regs and talking about the regs. So, yeah, we're gonna do it all. It's only 8:05. Plenty of time.
I have lots of comments.
Comments, you mean on the regs?
Yeah.
Okay.
I thought you were going to say you have lots of coffee because you were drinking the coffee right as you said
Got a
that.
lot of coffee too.
I can't drink coffee this late. I'd be up all night long. Aha, he's back. I hope you had a good presentation.
I did. We're looking to buy some riverfront land, and it's going to be quite remarkable. And I do apologize for not being able to attend the full meeting.
It's all right. We just did some, non-voting kind of things. It was basically Jennifer Wallace. It was, and she's very interesting, but she'll come and update us again about what they're doing.
Well, Bob's
All
on
right.
the committee, so it's okay.
That's true.
I
Yep.
do have a front row seat to that, and it's remarkable stuff.
Great. That's great. Well, yeah, you update us on it whenever there's anything interesting going on with that group. Okay, so let's move on to 292 Pelham Hill Road. Pam, are you here?
I'm here. I had to find
Great.
the unmute.
All right, well, if you could present this project, this is tree removal within buffer zone.
Right, we have 2 oak trees. They're not far from the edge of our driveway, but they are 75 feet from the edge of an intermittent water when it rains in the spring or when we get a lot of water. That wetland area runs like a little creek through there. And we want to take these 2 trees down so we get some more sun because they have totally encroached on my garden. And we've had a bunch of trees that were not in the wetland area. We just had those taken down the other day, and so would like to get these last 2 trees taken down. The people we hired, well, they use machines as well, but they climbed to do we had 4 other trees, one that was about to fall on the house, and they took that one down. So they'll be leaving the roots. They'll be just cutting the trees off at the base, removing all the limbs, and chipping them up, and the logs will get lifted off and brought up onto another area of the yard, so my husband can cut them up for wood for the fireplace. We don't expect that there'll be any damage at all done to the ground underneath. It'll just be taking those trees down.
All right, so you said that they're gonna climb the tree? They're taking it down by
That
hand?
was my understanding, that they were gonna climb the trees.
Okay. Right. Okay, well, there was a site visit done. Jan and I were there. I can't remember if there was anyone else there, but we did measure the distance from the trees to the bank of the intermittent stream, and it was at least 75 feet. So we're thinking of issuing an administrative approval for this because it's a small project, buffer zone project. I guess the question would be, does the commission feel that they need to put up any kind of erosion control sort of between the stream and where the trees are going to come down? It sounds like there's not going to be a lot of equipment used if they're just going to climb the trees.
The trees were very
So-
close to the driveway and on the flat part of the land.
Yeah,
Had to go a little ways to hit the hill, so I don't think there's any erosion concerns. And on top of that, Pam might have mentioned that it's a very wooded lot. So 2 trees are a tiny amount of their woods.
Right. And we have tons of oaks. They're good pollinator trees.
Yeah, there was no slope even that headed towards that stream bank from where the trees were. And you're right, they can do all the work right from the driveway, which is on the opposite side of the trees from the resource area.
Yeah.
So I'm all right also with not putting any erosion control in. Bob, do you have any concerns?
No, it seems to make sense to me, so I have no objection.
All right. Is there any public comment? All right, seeing there's no public comment, I'm looking for a motion to issue administrative approval for the removal of the trees at 292 Pelham Hill Road.
So moved.
I'll second, please.
Great. All right, Douglas,
Aye.
Rowan,
Aye.
and Wilson, aye. All right, thank you, Pam. I'll
you.
get the paperwork to you hopefully next week.
Okay. And is that all I have, so I can schedule with them to take the trees down? Okay.
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate your
Okay.
time.
Yep, thank you. All right. Okay, next topic is item number 10, which is our discussion about potential conservation commission applicants or our conservation commission applicants. I don't know if Bob and Jan, you saw we got an email from Siobhan Best that she pulled out her application, so she won't be here tonight. But we've got Mayor Fox and Tom Seifert and Aaron Jacques are the three applicants that submitted answers to their questions. And it would be great if each one of you, hey Mayor, would just tell us why you're interested in being on the Conservation Commission. Mayor, would you like to go first?
Sure. I've lived in Shutesbury for 17 years. I've been at the lake. I have a cold, sorry. I've been at the lake for about 12 years. Love the lake with all my heart. I was happy to hear about Jen's presentation because it's been a continuing issue. I haven't been on a commission or committee or in probably about 6 or 7 years. I was last on the Board of Education, and I was the rep to the union where I did work on the budget at different times, but I did that for like 6 years. When I was much younger, I was a newspaper reporter, and for about 6 years, and I covered every week. I covered any planning boards, planning and zoning, wetland, I mean everything. So I had back then I had an extensive knowledge of land use boards, and I have a strong interest in the environment. So I thought this would be a good fit. Like I said, I haven't done anything in a while, so it would, good time. So here I am.
Great. Well, thank you for coming forward and offering all of that. So did you find it interesting to cover the land use boards when you were a reporter?
I did. I learned so much. I learned from the builders. I learned from the board meeting. The people on the boards and the commissions. I learned a lot. I covered it, and when I was in my hometown newspaper, I covered 2 different towns at different times. So I saw it in those towns as those 2 towns, and then when I left that newspaper and moved on to another one, and where I was at for 4.5 years, I covered that whole town as well. So it wasn't just one town. It was over 6 years, 6+ years. It was 3 different towns. So yeah, learned a lot.
Yeah, that's definitely a way
How to,
to, you know,
how to read regulations, you know, and I'm coming into this with no agenda whatsoever other than a love of the environment. So, um, that's all that I can say.
well, thank you for your interest. Jan and Bob, do you guys have any questions for Mayor?
I just wanted to say welcome, and I was a environmental reporter myself, and it led to a career in environment in the environmental science. So, uh,
Ah,
sitting and listening and learning from people worked out very well for me to move into that field.
yeah, there you go.
Hey, Mayor, are you available for our meetings and, you know, we have 3 or 4 site visits in the winter now every month,
Yeah,
but it's probably that every couple of weeks in the summer.
absolutely. I mean, I do take some trips, but I, yeah, my schedule is incredibly flexible. So, other than trips, I have
Would
no
your
kids.
legal background,
So,
would your legal background do us any good?
um, I don't have, well, I know Donna, so I mean, I don't have any land use expertise. Um, but when you read laws as much as I do and as much as um, I need to in my work, you pick things up pretty quickly. So yeah,
Okay.
Great.
this week I
That's
learned all
good.
about housing to help a client. So, and now I'm helping a former client, I'm helping him out so that he doesn't become unhoused. So, we pick things up, but it's just part of what we do, you know.
And you'd be willing to spend even maybe like a Saturday going to some of the classes that MACC has about being a commissioner. There's sort of a training program that Massachusetts Association of Conservation Commissions has for new commissioners. And I think you can do them all online. You can do some of them online
Yeah,
too. And then they have conferences, which is also a great way to learn. Jan went recently. So
absolutely.
great. All right. Well, thank you very much for your interest. Tom?
Good evening. How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good, thanks. Shall I just fire away?
Yeah, tell us about your interest in the Concom.
Thanks. Yeah. I became interested, I guess, after living in Shutesbury for, I don't know, a year or two. An issue came up with a person who lives near me, and I think I kind of became involved with witnessing a Concom. Some of the members currently might have been newish members then. Um, I remember that there was an order of conditions put on an RDA that I had appealed, and it came up that actually the order of conditions probably should have been on an NOI, and my appeal, although I appealed to Chapter 90, I believe actually should have been devoted to 91, or if it wasn't to 91, it should have been to 90. And in the process of kind of just asking questions and trying to figure out what was going on, I learned a lot about the processes going on in the Concom. And it just sparked my interest ever since then. Everything resolved really peacefully and well with that one case. And I gained an appreciation for what it is that I have around me, because I happen to live on the lake and have a really close by hiking trail available to me in the Kestrel Bog. And have since then, that was probably about 3 or 4 years ago. Um, since then, I've been really religious about attending all of the Concom meetings I can, even some site visits, and getting a really deep understanding of what regulates and allows us to have all of this great stuff around here. So whenever a chance comes up for the Concom, as you know, I apply, and I really feel I have a lot to offer skill-wise and love of environment wise. I used to be a professor of German. Before that, I was a quantitative chemist in an FDA regulated laboratory. I think I hit a lot of the marks for the types of skills that could be useful for the Concom. And it would be a really great opportunity to work with all of you. So I don't know what else to add. I know I've spoken to you a few times already about myself in interviews, so I fear about sounding redundant about a few things, but they wouldn't be redundant for everybody listening now. However, I'm just going to leave it at that for now. Please.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that. And we appreciate very much sort of your following of the Concom, coming to the meetings and being interested in the different applications and what's going on. It's really great. I guess my one question is again, which other committees, town committees are you on, and do some of their schedules conflict at all with our site visits and meetings that we have?
Yeah, I think I know of one and only one so far meeting that was a definite conflict between the Concom and the Stormwater Erosion Task Force that I'm on. I'm also on the Boating Safety Review Committee, but I will note that both that committee and the task force are time limited. The Boating Safety Review Committee could be done as early as April or May, and they meet on Wednesdays, which doesn't seem to pose any conflicts with Concom issues. I am an associate member on the planning board. We meet Mondays, and there's never been a conflict with a Concom issue and them. I would like to offer that that actually gives me really good experience for understanding committee work in general. I'm the secretary for the task force and the Voting Safety Review Committee as well as just a member. And I'm doing clerking probably starting at the end of the month in the Wendell Town Hall as well. So that'll be about 10 hours a month is what they guess now. It might not even be that much, probably mostly for the Board of Health. But I think that'll also give me some really good experience and skills to apply to being on the
Thank you.
too.
So thank you for your contribution to the municipal world. Bob or Jan, do you have any questions for Tom?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I did just happen to be on a meeting related to a filing that I was doing, and I saw Tom do a the presentation on of an appeal, and as a a conservation agent yourself, I have to say I was pretty impressed that somebody who didn't know this world was able to do an appeal to DEP and be successful, because not even conservation agents like myself could do that all the time. So I was impressed that he was able to come up with that skill set in on demand, because it's not easy. So that and I do know that he has been to many of the meetings and site walks. So anyway, I think that counts for something.
Definitely. All right. If there's no more questions, Aaron, would you like to present?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Erin Jock. I have been working in the wetlands world for about 20 years now. I've worked for about 4 different towns as a conservation agent and served as a conservation commission member as well. Also worked in consulting, presenting projects, served on a number of boards, Society of Ecological Restoration, the Mass Forest Stewardship Committee. What else? NERISA, the New England Urban Regional Information System Association, and I know there's another one, but I can't remember it right now. I currently work as a municipal conservation agent, and I live in Shutesbury, and I have two small children. I have a deep love for open space and natural resources, and I've basically dedicated my professional career to protecting as much as I can and, regulating projects so that work can happen and have as little impact to our environment as possible. I've got a lot of professional training besides my academic training. I've had a lot of education in stormwater, best management practices, erosion and sediment control. And also I have academic training in wetlands assessment and wetland plant identification, or wetlands identification and wetland delineation. So, yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, I know I come to the table with a lot of experience, but I think that sometimes folks who are, and I'm, just think you guys all do a great job. And I think sometimes folks who are coming to the table new have just as much to offer as somebody who's in the field. So I think it's awesome that we have a wide range of candidates tonight.
Well, thank you. And yeah, you would fit right in with the Concom. I guess my one question is similar to me. You work for the town of Amherst, and I guess, yeah, have you looked into sort of conflict of interest kind of things in terms of having both jobs?
Yes, I did call the State Ethics Commission, and I spoke to my supervisor at the town of Amherst. So yeah, as far as state ethics was concerned, I would, have to recuse myself from projects where there was work going on lands abutting town of Amherst lands. And if there were developers or projects which were coincident with the town of Amherst, then I would have to file a conflict of interest disclosure. So an appearance of conflict of interest disclosure to get approval in order to participate. But according to the state ethics, that's a pretty commonplace thing for people who work in municipal government and serve on municipal boards. So they didn't seem to be concerned about it at all. They just said that you have to make sure you're sort of checking in, and if an unusual situation arises, that, have an open line of communication with how to address it.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Bob and Jan, any questions for Aaron?
Beth, are
Aaron,
there instances where you would both wind up in a position where you would have to
Yeah.
recuse?
Yes, definitely. Bob, did you have a question?
yeah, pardon me, Aaron, you have a remarkable resume related to wetlands. That's amazing. I'm not sure we've met, but I do think I believe I do recognize your name. Um, just completely because I'm curious, what what do you see as a way that we could reach people from Shutesbury related to regulations and what's required? What would you think is a good way to reach out to the people of the town?
You mean in terms of making them aware of what the regulations are so that they can file permits and understand the rules, or?
Yeah, exactly. Uh, when there seems to be work that's done without permits, just simply out of ignorance. Do you have an idea of how we could reach people and spread the word?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really tough question. I mean, I think there's been different strategies in different towns I've worked for. So in one town I worked for, they put together like a sort of an informational brochure that they put in town hall, so people could sort of get a breakdown of what the rules and regulations were like in layman's terms, so that they could just look at it and get some basic information that might point them towards some additional resources and or just help them to understand like some basic things that they shouldn't do if they have resources, you know, near their property. I do think that websites can be really useful. I've tried to, like, for example, you know, provide links to like invasive species management or planting of native species, things like that. But I'm definitely would like to expand that to like, you know, educating people about the dangers of rodenticides and, you know, all kinds of subject matter that can have positive impacts. But I think, you know, reaching people about the existence of the regulations and what the regulations require, you know, takes some some creativity, I guess. Challenge. It's definitely a challenge. And unfortunately, I think a lot of the education that I encounter is when people do something wrong, or even just people inquiring with questions, that's the opportunity to reach them. But yeah, it's a challenge.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
All right, does anyone have any more questions for any of our three applicants?
Just like to say thank you all for coming out. This has been a, I think you're all superbly qualified, and I'd be delighted to work with any of you.
And do any of you have questions for us about being on the commission?
I mean, I guess I have a couple
Go for it.
questions. So I guess just in general, like for an average week, how many hours does each commission member spend on commission business? I imagine it's more for the chair, but
Right, well, from November to March, we just have meetings once a month. So we do kind of slow it down in the winter, and then we go back to twice a month over the summer months. You know, right now I feel like we're probably doing 1 to 2 site visits. I feel like, well, so in between two meetings, say it's in the summer and you've got a meeting every 2 weeks, there's probably 2 to 3 site visits during that time period between the meetings to get ready for the next meeting. I feel like we've been pretty busy. Tonight we had, you know, a number of applications and things that actually unfortunately had to get moved to our next meeting. But yeah, we're pretty busy. So the site visits, you know, they're half an hour, and say in a 2-week period, you have 3 of those. And then you also in a 2-week period need to review maybe 2 applications. I
and
would say that.
how many permits on average do you see per meeting approximately, like 1 to
I'd say if
3
you
or
averaged them all out, it would be only 1 to 2 if you average for the whole year, because there's certainly meetings where we don't have any. We're discussing other things and not actually having an NOI or an RDA or something come forward. And then there's other meetings where maybe we've had, you know, 3 or something. So yeah.
And how late do your meetings typically go?
Well, once we get through this regulation thing, and if there's nothing really special, we try to be done by 8:30, 8:45, for a normal meeting.
Thank you.
Sure. All right. Well, I do want to thank all of you. Thank you for filling out the questionnaire.
Could I ask a quick question, please?
Oh, yep, definitely.
Sure. Because you were asking about the recusal situation. Is that something you face now already? Like, have you had to do that as part of being an Amherst employee?
So far, I had to recuse myself at least once, maybe twice since I've been on the commission. So many of the projects have been down at the lake, and that's sort of the opposite end of Shutesbury from where Amherst owns a lot of land. We own a lot of land by Atkins Reservoir.
Right, right.
Well, you
Yeah, I
kind
know.
of did for
Thank you.
Houston Gauge this year.
Right, that was one that was recent that I recused
Yeah.
myself from, but I think I also recused myself from some work on Baker Road at some point.
So
Bob?
my recusal distance would be 300 feet from me, is that right? Or from my property borders? Because I get interesting maps when I go on to the Shutesbury GIS thing because of underwater parcels. And it appears as though I even have abutters across the lake, which I was surprised to learn might technically be the case. Even though those underwater parcels are not owned by me or that person, and they are longer than 300 feet away from me. But
Yeah.
things are really tight around the lake. Does it come up already, the fact that two commissioners already live within 300 feet of each other? That recusals become an issue? Because that would be to, like, I see where you're talking about yourself and the one applicant for Amherst, but are there recusal considerations already in play, and how do you deal with them in terms of just the coincidence of people who live near each other and the properties in between them, or that they both touch?
Well, right, if two commissioners, which I think Bob and Jan are definitely close to each other. If there's a project that's within 300 feet of both houses, so then they become abutters, then they do need to recuse themselves.
Yeah, I just
Right.
wanted to say that I have recused myself from applications that have been a budding to me. So uh, so yes is the answer.
I guess I bring it up because in no relation to the quality of any candidacy, it appears as though it could be a situation where there would be three commissioners potentially, depending on how this goes tonight, who would live, who would potentially all touch the same property within 300 feet of themselves.
I'm questioning that 300 feet. I understand if we're direct abutters. Wait a minute, Donna's got something to say, so I'd rather hear from her than me. But you're on mute.
Muted.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say, the 300 feet is the conflict of interest because they're considered parties of interest under the law. And because your regs say that you have to also notify people across water bodies, that puts those people within it. But any of you can get from an appraiser a decision that the hearing that you're listening to wouldn't affect or increase or decrease the value of your property, and then you no longer have a conflict. So if it got to a point where you couldn't have a quorum because of conflicts, you could pursue that venue, so you could, in fact, have people participate without a conflict.
Is it recommended
Thank
to
you.
be in a position that would more likely necessitate that than not? I guess is my question, just in terms of best practices. The timeframes involved to get an appraisal, like what if it took months and the permit application had to be addressed before then? I just wanted to throw it out there because I noticed from the addresses involved that we're already in a situation where two commissioners will co-touch properties within 300 feet of themselves. So it exists already, and this would be a case of actually adding to that, not just another set of two, depending on how this goes tonight. I represent the only person who wouldn't bring a mutual conflict of interest, in other words.
Well, I did look at those maps, and I created a map myself. Maybe I'll just quickly share my screen just to bring shed a little light on that question. Oops, actually. if I can. Why is this not working? Sharing screens. Here we go. Okay. All right, so I did look at those three maps that someone sent us. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
And I put dots on the three parcels that seem to fall into all three abutter circles. Those are the only three parcels that fall into all three circles. So within 300 feet of all three, that would be Mayor's, Jan's, and Bob's houses. Two of these are owned by the town of Shutesbury. So really, there's really one parcel. So I guess I just felt like just expressing that I'm not sure that's such a valid argument, because the odds of a project coming in that one parcel while we still have these commissioners, the same mix of commissioners, seems rarer than, for example, a situation where both Aaron and I would have to recuse ourselves, and potentially somebody, a third person, would have an issue with that same project.
May I
It just
rebut just
seems,
for a second? Because you're considering the 3-person case scenario, but if you just considered the 2 existing commissioners and all of the properties that they co-touched for 300 feet, and then if one of them with a new commissioner who was also there, like collectively, the abutters to 2 of them are also numerous, not just the abutters to all 3 of them. And it could just represent, besides just the 300-foot party of interest issue, a precarious issue, because they are so close. They all live with the same set of turns in the road and driveway issues and whatnot. It seems to them as though they could potentially represent a collective interest just by virtue of geography.
yeah, that's sort of a different question. I was just pointing out that this idea that it could often happen that all three of them would have to recuse at the same time because they're all abutters doesn't really look like it could happen that much.
But
But
even
just,
if
I'll stop sharing.
even if 2 of them recused, and like an unfortunate situation like tonight happens where another commissioner has to be away, it's just always a precarious situation. So,
Donna, I might have fallen asleep for a second. The way I understood having to recuse yourself is if I am a direct abutter, so my immediate neighbor on any side wants to do something, then I recuse myself. If a neighbor who is not a direct abutter wants to do something, and I feel that I can be unbiased, is that a conflict of interest?
I think the problem is that there's 2 different, Jesus. I think the problem is that there's 2 different definitions of abutters. Under land use law, parties in interest are abutters within 300 feet of the property line. Under the conflict of interest law, they say abutters, which would technically mean somebody right next door.
I think that's how I've been looking at it.
Yeah, no,
And then, you know, the reality is I might be close friends with somebody that's much further away that I might have to recuse myself, you know, because I'm biased. But in a small town, in neighborhoods, we're in the most densely populated section of town. So of course we're going to know people. You can't get out of knowing people. Everything can't be a conflict of interest.
but when you send out a permit application, I think you have to include all of the 300-foot parties of interest.
And no, I don't think that's true for Conservation Commission stuff.
Oh, okay.
Because I just got one from my catty corner neighbor and it isn't, I don't think it's 300 feet. Although it did include the dam, which certainly confuses me, but okay.
Mayor, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I just want to point out that when you showed that map, I'm not even on it. I am way far from the lake. I am at a ridge over the lake. I am more than 300 feet from the first tier, as I always call it, of the people that are directly on the lake. So there, I'm nowhere near either Bob or Jan. Bob is probably my closest neighbor. But yeah, I don't see the 300 feet issue. So. And
Okay,
also, I
well,
just also want to point out that none of the properties around me would necessarily have require conservation, a special, a special dispensation from the Conservation Commission, because there is no wetlands within 300 feet around me. So.
okay. Well, I think it's more from my perspective. I don't think the issue of having three people have to recuse themselves doing because they're within 300 feet of a project. I don't see that as really happening. I do see the concern that we've got three people from basically kind of like the same area of town, but I think that's all debatable. As Jan was saying, beggars can't be choosers. We've been advertising to fill this position a long time. Shutesbury is a small town. Again, not to pick on Aaron, but Aaron and I both work for the town of Amherst, and we both live on Montague Road. Like there's just not that many choices around Shutesbury to find people who will be on the commission and who are good fits, for the commission in the end, a small town. So that's my 2 cents. Tom?
Yeah, I get different addresses of overlap than you do. If I do a 300, like number 70 Lake Drive, you didn't have that on your list, but oh, of all three. Okay.
Yeah, you
No.
really need to look at.
Yeah. Okay.
You
Sorry.
need to, if you just look at Mayor's
Right.
Circle and Jan's Circle,
I get
there's
you.
just those three parcels and two of them are owned by the town of Shutesbury.
But I will add that just looking at any two of them, you end up with scores, like easily 40. Both two of them at a time could be affecting. So,
Yeah. All right. Let's take some comments from the public. If public have questions for our three applicants, that'll be fun. Sharon?
Yeah, hi, thank you. I just wanted to point out that the one parcel that is owned by a resident that's in the overlap area is owned by somebody who regularly has NOIs before the Concom. And so that really does propose a problem for the Concom if all three of the commissioners who live in that area have to recuse themselves. That person would not have to abide by the bylaws and regulations. So it isn't a non-issue. That one property is actually a big issue because they have had NOIs before the town every year for quite a number of years. Thank you.
I don't know how many they've had. I mean, I don't think he had that particular property since I've been on the Concom. I've been on the Concom now for 3 years at least, and there hasn't been an application from that property. But nonetheless, we understand what the point is with that. I see Scott is here.
It's 70 Lake Drive. Yeah, so it has been before the Concom every year for a number of years.
Okay.
Owned by Mark Rivers.
Right, Scott?
I don't think that's the same parcel that I had identified. But anyway, hi Scott. You
Hi
missed
there.
you missed the applicants' introductions.
I caught part of them. I had called in earlier, so I was listening until I could get to a place where I could have a camera. So I did catch some of the applicants, but good to see
Great.
all of you. Sorry I'm late.
That's okay. Great. I guess just one more as a question for Donna is in that kind of a situation, say it's a different situation, say it's that for some reason our quorum is 3, so 3 commissioners have some kind of a conflict of interest for some reason with a particular parcel or a project. What can the commission do to move forward in that kind of situation?
I mean, it's a really difficult issue. Obviously, an elected board can do the rule of necessity, and the elected officials can come back and vote. That rule is not applicable to appointed boards. So, under those circumstances, I believe under the act, the petition would be granted, and then it would be up to abutters to appeal. I don't believe you have, they're automatically denied if you can't meet. Some boards, if they can't grant it, are automatically denied, but I don't see that in chapter 13140.
Interesting. Something to research a little bit, try to figure out.
I'll look into it and figure it out.
Great, thanks. Jill Buchanan, you have a comment?
Thank you. I just wanted to pretty much reinforce what you had suggested there, Beth, about this issue of having such a large percentage of the commission being from the lake area. And even if there's, technical nuances to the 300 feet abutting situation, just the fact that it, as a group, there is this kind of sense that there's a representation that represents the interests of the lake, de facto, whether people have close friends there or feel that they can be unbiased. From a public perception standpoint, it doesn't look great, and it's hard to feel confident that people who have officially represented the Lake Wyola Association can be unbiased in their actions on the commission, and especially if there are any candidates who are not coming from the lake area. I think that's a really important factor in your consideration into who you're recommending. So thank you.
Thank you. Tom?
Yeah, I do have to object to the document you showed because I am doing the 300-foot abutment on the same map you're using. And depending on which parcels of the different commissioners we're talking about, you will get more than the 3. I believe you showed 3, but there are more than. So I don't accept that your document is necessarily showing all of potential overlaps. And I could show that if you want me to share my screen. But
sure.
Okay. If I can. So I'm never sure what people are seeing. Are people seeing a screen with a pink area on it?
Yeah.
Okay. Are you seeing the white parcel in the middle here?
Yep.
So that touches number 70 right here. You didn't include number 70 on your map. Number 70 is also adjacent to number 66, which is Mr. Douglas. Now, if I go over here to this parcel, I believe, no, it's this one.
No, it's further up. It's the large one at the end of
One is
Haskins
owned by
Way.
yeah, but this is also part of this is Mary Elizabeth Fox. Is that Mayor Fox? ZB 35. And if you do a 300 foot from that one, you will also include number 70. And I believe there are a few over here as well that are included. And again, this is 66 where my hand is now. So I'm just pointing out that this is a parcel owned by Mayor Fox that hits number 70. We saw that a Rowan parcel did. We know that a Douglas parcel did. And it's just one parcel, and there might be more that contradicts the map that you showed. So I just want to make sure that we're going from the same data.
Yeah, no, I was only looking at Mayor's other parcel, which is a little bit one step back. Is that
Sure.
larger
And I
one?
think because they're all
I didn't
BD
know,
parcels,
didn't
they're all
see the
actually a single property.
right. So I
So
was just
yeah,
looking
that's
at
what I
the
was guessing happened, is maybe it was a question of the parcels. So
right.
the
I was
map,
looking at the maps that were provided to the commission earlier today, which was coming
I don't
from
know.
Mayor's other parcel, not that parcel. So I didn't know that she owned that parcel.
I don't even know what maps you're referring to, but
Oh,
yeah,
somebody sent us these exact maps, but they sent them from.
because anyway, yeah. So I would prefer it if we could at least see an accurate display of the properties that could potentially cause all three commissioners to have to recuse themselves.
You know, I think we're in the weeds here. We haven't
Yeah.
had this happen. And if it does happen, we have town council that we can go to
Well,
for our alternative options. And I think this has gone on long enough.
well, did you recuse yourself from
I
that
agree.
number 70 affair recently? Because I know Mr. Douglas said he
I
did.
wasn't on the commission then.
Oh, I thought you
But I
voted on.
I will
70
recuse
recently.
myself from my catty corner neighbor. There's an NOI coming in.
No, but on number 70 Lake Drive, did you vote recently?
No. I don't
Okay.
think I did. But in any event, I think we're in the weeds here. We beat this to death.
But I'm saying
Donna
if you,
McNichol said she was going to look into this for us, and I'm happy with that response.
I understand that, but I'm just realizing now that you might have had to recuse yourself from a number 70 issue. And it's just bringing to light that this recusal issue is an issue. Did you vote on
And
it?
as Donna said, when it comes down to it, if an abutter wants to complain, they can.
No, this would be an ethics violation. This wouldn't be.
Then again, somebody has to file that, don't they?
Can you tell us whether you voted on something for number 70?
Not without checking.
Can we check that now?
No.
No, I think we're done with this. Tom, can you stop sharing your screen, please?
Oh, sorry. I forgot about that. My bad.
Thanks. I think we've gotten off topic. We're here to vote on the commissioner. So why don't I share with how the process is going to move forward. So tonight, last time we went through this, we provided 2 names to the select board, and I've checked with them to see if that's the correct process again for this nomination, and they said yes, that's how we should do it. We will recommend 2 names to the select board, and they will make the decision hopefully at their next meeting on Tuesday, if we can get them the names soon enough to get on their agenda. So that's how it's gonna go. So we have yeah, Scott's here too. So we have 4 commissioners here now to make this vote. Do any of the commissioners have any more questions for our applicants? No, seeing none. I think the way we did this before was that, I think I propose, after hearing the presentations and the discussion, I propose who I would like to recommend, and then we discuss that. And we all eventually come to a consensus as to who we want to recommend, based on her obvious wetland experience. I propose Erin Jacques, and I also think that Mayor Fox would do a really great job with her experience as a lawyer, and her experience just working with land use groups as a reporter. Those would be my recommendations. How do people feel about that?
I agree with you, and I also place a lot of interest in what they've said about being available and having the time to invest in the commission.
I would put forward Tom Seifert and Aaron Jock. I've seen Tom in action, and he certainly does put in a lot of time with this commission. And Aaron
Okay.
seems to have a tremendous resume of experience in this particular area of focus.
Well, I just want to say thank you to all the applicants here, and I think we're lucky to have this much talent and folks to choose from. When I had thought about folks in terms of some different skill sets that they would bring to the commission, I was in the same place that Beth was, that Aaron and Mayor would bring something unique and different, a good complement to the existing commissioners already on the commission.
All right, so that looks like that's 3. So I'm looking for a motion to recommend Aaron Jock and Mayor Fox to the select board for their vote for a new commissioner.
So motioned.
Second?
Second.
Okay, Con,
Aye.
Rowan,
Aye.
Douglas,
It seems we have consensus. Aye.
okay, Wilson, aye. All right, thank all 3. I thank all 3 of you very, very much. I thank you for your interest and everything that you put forward. It's wonderful. And thanks for coming tonight. All right. Time to move on to the dreaded regulations.
Wait a minute. Does Scott have a report for land use?
I think I had shared most all of it, but just to recap and maybe some new pieces of information. We did, I think at the last meeting, we had talked about the parking lot for the West Quabbin Woodlands and I had shared that I had received bids and that we were going to move forward with those bids. Since that time, I think we were a little unsure as to the process for how we would go about doing that. And I want to thank Beth and our land use clerk and Mateo and others I think they were working with town council and to find out, given the small amount of the value of the contract, whether or not this needed to be issued by the town under a formal contract or how that would take place. And I think we're still awaiting word back on that, or at least I was as of this morning. I'm not exactly sure where we are in terms of the process. We do have folks interested in constructing that parking lot, but I think we're waiting to pull the trigger on exactly how we would proceed with that.
All right, well, thank you for all your work on that. Yeah, I think it feels like we're getting close.
Yeah, for
And-
sure. And if I think there was an option, maybe that the commission could issue it, being a small value. And if that's the case, then I was going to move forward with with our lowest bid there to conduct the work.
Cool.
All right.
That's great. Awesome. Good job. All right, the regulations. So I think we had left off the last time we talked about that we were going to look at docks and piers and floats section, and then bank section and freshwater wetlands section. I don't know how much more you guys have looked at, but I've kind of gone ahead of that. And if we have time tonight, it's however people feel, we can kind of just keep going through some more of the sections. I don't know. How do you guys feel about that?
Well, let's jump in.
Let's jump in.
So Beth, I don't know, I wasn't around for going through the stuff you already went through. So I don't know if you want me to make comments right from the beginning or whether you just want me to make comments from where you're taking up.
Yeah, I guess if you have some general comments right now, that would be helpful.
Um, yeah, I mean, I can start as early as page 2. So, you know, I mean, I don't, however you want me to do it here. Or I can write those to you, I mean, it's up to you guys.
Well, I think once we, get through the whole thing ourselves, and add in changes that we've talked about in previous meetings and get sort of a more final copy, I think, you will be taking a look at it. If you'd rather wait till then, I guess if there's smaller comments, that would be the place to do that. But if you have some real issues with some things, I guess we'd want to know right now.
I mean, I think overall, I mean, I found some typos and some general things that I would ask you to consider. Certain language that I think might need to be considered. So why don't we go to where you are and I'll add my comments from there. And then, I mean, things like I'm really concerned with certain language you have, like a clear reason for, being able to meet a preponderance. That kind of language has no legal definition. And I think we want to go back to convincing or preponderance or something that's more of a legal terminology around that. But I can give you those overall general comments, and rather than having you start at the beginning again, and they can just work into my final review and comments when we get to my final review.
Okay, yeah.
Beth,
That
can I raise
seems
a question of
fair.
order, please? Could I raise a question of order, please?
Okay.
Thank you. I do want to appreciate you folks volunteering your time on the commission here and respect that. I do want to mention, though, that as I understand it, Donna, you recused yourself last time regarding the updated regulations on the previous wetland protection bylaw. And my question is why you're weighing in now on new regulations. What is different and why would you be in a position to be commenting on these regulations?
I don't have a conflict of interest on general bylaws or regulations within the town that would affect everybody.
But my question is, why did you recuse yourself last time and not this time?
That had to do with a relation, because I was representing both the select board and the Concom during applications and issues relevant to the library. And so I had to recuse myself from any representation of the Concom or the building committee while the building committee was before the Concom. So I didn't do any work for either group while one was before the other getting permitted, because they were both clients.
And you're saying your case is that that situation is no longer the
Is
situation,
resolved,
no longer
right?
the case.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I'm happy to take a few comments, but I think, the idea here is that we need to get through what we need to get through. And just let me come right out and maybe answer some people's questions that we are going to expeditiously get through these regulations. I'd like to get through a number of sections tonight. My plan, which I need to confer with the rest of the commission, is to really, between now and our next meeting, January 9th, take all the changes that we've made so far and incorporate them and produce a much closer to final product for the commission to review for the 9th meeting. If by the end of the 9th meeting, we actually have a document that we're happy with and ready to go, then we may be ready to schedule the public hearing. That's the schedule. So I hope that that answers some people's questions in terms of, we got a lot of feedback from the town that we wanted this done expeditiously. So we're gonna make that effort to get this done and get it finalized. So I just wanted to say that, hoping that would answer some questions, but I still see some people have their hands up. Sharon?
Yeah, in the email that Donna McNichol sent regarding the regulations, her recusal for the regulations last time, the reason she gave was that she lived on Lake Wyola and this had to do with wetlands protections. So I don't understand how the reason that she's giving now is a different reason than she gave for the last regulations, and the reason that she had given in the past still holds. So I don't understand why she's not recusing herself this time.
I've explained why I'm not recusing myself this time. This is a general regulation applicable to the entire town of Shutesbury. The last time I recused myself is because I represented both boards.
But that wasn't the
fact
reason
that,
you gave.
please let me finish. The fact that it also had to do with Lake Wyola, I was mistaken about that. That is not a conflict for me because it's a general regulation for the town of Shutesbury.
But that was the reason that you gave last time. So that's what the town went on and that's what we were counting on. So how can you just change it now conveniently to be town council for these regulations? Like, we trusted you to give us the accurate reason for recusal last time, and now you're giving us a completely different reason.
I'm not going to continue to explain myself. I've answered your question.
I don't think that you have. I think that you've
we agree to disagree then.
It's not a disagreement. It's a matter of fact of what your reason was last time, and you just changed it to suit the current situation. It's not an opinion.
Thank you, Sharon. Does anybody else have a comment before we begin reviewing the regulations?
I think Tom has his hand up.
Is the chair recognizing me?
Yeah.
Thank you. Do we have any written documentation for the recusal about the regulations last time? Because the only written documentation I'm aware of is an email.
I mean, I would have to look back to that time and see if I can find anything, if that's what
Asking
you're
the town
asking.
council, is there any written documentation of the recusal last time besides the email to the Conservation Commission and a select board member? June 19th, 2020.
I don't know what you're talking about, written documentation. From who?
On June 19th, 2023, you recused yourself due to the expansiveness of the regulations given your property at the lake. Is there any other documentation regarding your recusal for the previous regulation?
I don't believe so. Not to my knowledge.
But you gave a reason tonight that is different from the one that's documented. I respectfully request that the town council
and I've explained
themselves while we figure out this
that
perception.
very specifically, when I made that recusal, I have re-looked at it and made a determination that because it's a general regulation for the entire town, that I do not have a conflict. I don't know how I can say it more clearly. I basically had recused myself on regulations concerned about my property at the lake. I looked at it further and made a determination that because it's a general regulation for the entire town, it does not create a conflict for me. If it created a conflict for me, it would create a conflict for anybody that lived at the lake working on these regulations. The law is clear that if it's a general bylaw or regulation for the entire town, it does not create a conflict. I can't say it any clearer. I've said it twice. I said my recusal before. I may not have even had to do that. It was based on 2 reasons, not just one. And I'm not going to explain it anymore.
Yeah, I think we've answered, she's answered the question. All right,
I
so
don't think
let's
the
move on.
perception, I don't think the perception of a conflict of interest has been resolved. And as a taxpayer, as a voter, as a concerned citizen, as a person who believes in democracy, we could go up the scale. It is poor practice. We have documentation, and I understand your reasoning, Council, about the generalness of the bylaw, but we have issues of expansiveness in your previous recusal, which is essentially a synonym for the topics you're talking about now. And I think the town would feel much more comfortable if they could see an outside confirmation and not just your word that you did the research and realized you didn't have to do it this way or that way, because we only have the record of your actual recusal. So it would really help the town feel that they can trust your participation at this point. They could see why that recusal is no longer valid beyond just hearing that you claim that.
Tom,
And
I'm offended by your approach to this.
I don't mean to offend you. I'm
Well,
explaining
you
why.
have. You have. And I'm not saying.
I apologize for offending you. I really had no intention for doing that.
We are
All right,
clearly in the
we're gonna
weeds, and I
move
would like to
on.
get back to the
We're moving
regulations.
on, yeah, all right, we're moving on. We're not talking about this anymore. Bob, do you have something to say that has
Yeah,
nothing to do with
sure.
that?
I do wish to move through this expeditiously, as you mentioned. And Donna, you did give a question. Is it better to do it piece by piece or at the end? And Madam Chair, I was just going to say, I think probably to streamline things, it would be better to get the comments at the end of the finished document. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, I think based on Donna's kind of just description of the comments she has, I think that might be true. I mean, she'll be here right now while we go through these sections, and if she has comments on these sections, great. But yeah, I mean, we want to move through this expeditiously, so let's do that. All right, I'm going to share my screen.
Beth, might I suggest that we not take public comments while we work on this now?
Yeah, I think we need to follow the protocol that I talked about earlier in the meeting, which is Concom does their work. We take general comments from the Concom. Once that's all settled, then we ask for public comment. All right, here is the docks, piers, and floats section. Can everybody see my screen?
I can.
Okay.
Beth, can you give me the page just so I can get to it in my paper copy? You know,
It should start on the bottom of page 29-ish. There's been so many different versions of this.
no, I can find it from there.
Okay. All right, so looking at this section is all new. So this section was not in our current regulations at all. And in the end, I didn't have very many changes to it. I saw a typo right here. Lake Wyola is that where it is? Yeah. No, number 15. Like
Is designated.
yeah, is designated. Lake Wyola is designated by the Massachusetts Public Waterfront Act. But in general, I thought, this introduces a topic that is very important in Shutesbury. What happens down at the lake is important, and docks and piers and how we deal with them is important. There's the Chapter 91 licensing, which, this 10.15. Yeah, so that's one of the points, I guess, with chapter 91, is that to issue a chapter 91 license, there needs to be an order of conditions or a determination from the commission that we've talked about the project and we've looked at the project in terms of impact on resource areas like bank and land underwater. So they need that answer before they're going to issue a chapter 91. And then kind of reverse of that, I believe in here, you know, I read this, but I may not find the exact areas where we say that we're issuing orders of conditions where one of the conditions is that people get their chapter 91 licensing. So it's kind of a little back and forth with what's going on there. So I don't have any other changes except maybe another typo.
Beth,
Yep.
section 10.46.
Yep. But can we just, I want to make one comment about one that's before that is 10.4.2. The commission shall review seasonal floats, buoys, swimming platforms under the small project permit application. Again, I'm fine with that. Again, this is a whole new section, so this was not anything that was voted on with our existing regulations. This is all new stuff. I'm okay with it being approved under a small project. If anybody has concerns about that, that would be something just to think about. If you haven't thought about it already, would you prefer it to be under a RDA, you know? So this section separates floats, buoys, and swimming platforms from docks. Docks and piers and walkways are separate, and I believe it says that those require an NOI. But it is allowing these other things that are sort of attached to the ground differently under small project permit application. Just something to note. Okay, so sorry, Donna, what were you saying?
The first sentence, docks, piers, walkways, or floats shall not degrade resource areas during construction or for the life of the structure through.
Yeah, I saw that too. I think this goes away.
Yeah, that's what's sort of, okay, yep.
And I think it's just the life of the structure. Let's see, anything else? This section, I thought it was okay. I didn't have any substantial changes to it. Does anybody else have comments and things on the?
I have a comment. I'm not sure where it sticks in because I'm not looking at the same spot you are. But under the Chapter 91 license rules from the states.
Yep.
There are exceptions that are not in this regulation. The exceptions include structures that existed before 1963 or before 1965 in inland wetlands. Approval is not required by conservation commissions. Structures that existed before January 1st, 1984 must notify the local conservation commission. They don't need to license. Structures existing on or after January 1st, 1984 must obtain an order of conditions like you're describing, but for these older grandfathered docks and piers, there's no requirement by the state, and I don't think we should invent one.
That's very good to know. I didn't go in and look at actual Chapter 91, but
it's under their small simplified license application renewal directions.
Is this thing gonna let me do anything? It froze. Oh, there we go. I think that's something we should look into.
I think you can just add unless grandfathered pursuant to whatever,
Chapter 91.
Chapter 91.
That's a good idea. Oh, this is so slow. Sorry. Oh, it froze. No. Ah. It's a really large document with all the edits and everything in it, all the comments, and that just makes it huge. Oh, it worked, yay. Um, yeah, so what did we say? Pursuant to exemptions included in chapter 91?
Right. No, it'll say, unless subject to the exemptions in chapter 91.
Oops. Ah. Oh, froze. Froze. Come on. All right, well, these are things I can write down and add later. Let me write that in. It's 10-1-5. Subject to the exemptions included. No. All right, I will add that sentence.
And
Bob?
additionally,
Oh.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I'd like to just consult council for a moment. Uh, uh, Town council, I am a possessor of a pond float, and I'm concerned that I should recuse myself from this particular deliberation.
I mean, as I said, this is a general bylaw that's applicable to everybody in the town of Shutesbury. And I know we're talking about the lake, and I own property at the lake, and but I just don't see, because it being a general bylaw, that people can't participate in this discussion.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
All right, Jan, did you have something else to add?
I do. So I have a couple of other considerations. One is toward the end of this 10.4.9 about storage of docks. Some of the lots around the lake aren't large enough to allow residents to comply with the regulations. So I don't think we should hamstring. I don't think we should do that when we know we're going to be hamstringing people that live there and don't have room to store these docks out of the water off season, out of the aura.
All right, so this is the one. Storage of floats, seasonal pier material, and boats must be stored in an area outside of a resource area, except or riverfront, and must be transported there too without causing damage to any resource area. Outside of a resource area. Well, it says except the aura or riverfront area. So you can store your boat in the, or I mean your dock in the aura.
In the buffer.
Yep.
Okay. The other thing is, in many cases, I think it's going to be difficult for homeowners to install their docks with 25-foot setbacks from abutting properties. If your lot's only 50-foot wide, it gets to be a little tricky for everybody to have enough room.
So that's a requirement under chapter 91, right?
It's also a great pond thing. There's also a requirement that you be able to walk around the pond. And we know you can't do that, and probably haven't been able to do it for 100 years since they raised the dam. You can only do that in November when the water's down and we haven't had any rain.
Right.
So there's some things built into chapter 91 that are
Yeah.
not very workable for our situation. And I think we ought to be cognizant of that when we write the regulations.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think I need to look more at what exactly chapter 91 says, and I think we gonna have to change too much in this section, but just more add some of the language from chapter 91 in here, just to allow for
The
these issues
flexibility
that
of our
we're saying.
situation. Yeah.
Yeah, more flexibility. I agree with that.
I mean, somewhere in there, it says that the commission is going to encourage landowners to obtain the license. Well, we're either going to do it or we're not. And I think we kind of covered it with that sentence we stuck in earlier. That was on 10.1.7. So if we're saying that we're going to require it, except unless, then we're fine. We don't need 10.1.7.
Yeah.
I think this thing could be edited is sort of my bottom line also. There's a lot of stuff about old wood docks and things, and I know we still have a few out there, but there aren't very many. And most of the new docks are those light ones that light shines through, and they're on little legs, and they're basically conforming.
Mm-hmm. All right, well, if you like we were all, I will take this document between now and January 9th and make some of these changes that we're talking about now. But if you have just some sort of edits in terms of rewriting a little bit, you could send them to me and we can talk about them also on the 9th.
Okay.
Unless you want to do it right now.
I think it would be easier to put something together that everyone can look at the same time.
Yeah. Okay. Bob and Scott, do you guys have any other changes to this section?
I didn't have any changes, but I appreciate hearing the comments of my fellow commissioners.
I think, Jan, when you're, and Beth are reviewing this section, you might want to do is say, docks, piers, and floats will be installed pursuant to the requirements of chapter 91, and then go through everything that you have in here and anything that's particular to Shutesbury and not included in 91, that would be added rather than having everything that's here that conflicts with 91 and has encouraged and then has you will apply kind of thing. Find what's really particular to Shutesbury that you want and basically say they need to do an order of conditions for and included the chapter 91 requirements for docks, something like that. I think it can be really shortened and accomplish the same thing.
I think that's a good idea. Is this where we would also write in obvious exceptions, like you can't walk around the lake, so you're probably not making those adjustments to your dock,
Yeah.
Okay, sure.
Yep.
Or you could even say pursuant to chapter 91, unless impractical, given the, physicality of the properties at Lake Wyola, something like that,
Okay, yeah, that would actually, if you're going to be broad about something, that's probably good, because then if your lot's not wide enough or whatever isn't in conformity, we can work around it. Okay.
All right. All right, the next section is we're getting into Article 4, the standards for inland wetlands. Banks. Again, this and most of these sections on each of the resource areas are fine. I think there was one issue in here, at least for me.
Now, Beth,
1222, section 1222. The upper bound. So to me, this is some of the most important stuff about regulations. This is what people are going to look at. This is what commissioners and future commissioners are going to go, how do you define what bank is? And they're going to look in the regs and they're going to look for it. And it says the upper boundary of a bank is the first observable break in the slope or the mean annual flood level, whichever is higher in elevation. And then it talks about the lower. Well, in the state regs, this is lower, whichever is lower in elevation. That absolutely has to be lower because we've got people going out and doing delineations. We can't have something based on the state regs that is different than what's in ours. And it's probably just a typo, but it is the kind of stuff that is the reason why we're going through these regulations as closely as we're going through these regulations. So I'm just pointing that out because I saw it and I was like, what? That's not how you delineate a bank, you know? So
Beth, I saw it and I noticed that it was different, but I thought it was changed because you can make your home rule petition stricter. So I thought it was put in there intentionally.
I thought of that too, but then I even did like, you know, sort of this little diagram of a bank, and it wouldn't make any sense if your flood level is higher, it's going to be above the top of the bank, right? Because they're talking about flood level. So you've either got a change in slope or you have your flood level. Well, if your flood level is literally above the top of bank, that's water, like that's not bank, right? So that's why it's always whatever's lower, because you've got a curve and then you have flood level, and if flood level is just below where there's a break in slope, then that's where the top of bank is. But if in the opposite, if you have a consistent flood level that actually goes over the bank, you know, like there are streams that have, that's their annual flood level, it actually goes over, then obviously the top of bank is where the break and slope is. Right. So
I followed you there, and I agree with you.
okay, good. So that we'll change that, and this was fine. Lower boundary bank is the mean annual level. And I think too that the regs say the lower boundary of bank is the mean annual low flow level. I'm not sure it says or low water level. For some reason, I crossed that out too. But I don't have those state regs with me. But or low water level, I don't know what that even is. Like, I don't think that's an official thing. Mean annual low flow is what is typically used for the bottom of bank.
Previously, when we were talking about the regs, some other meeting way back and when, we talked about getting rid of a lot of the preamble in these sections. Are we still going to do that? Because that was something we were going to shove to the front. When we got through all this stuff, we were going to make sure that we kind of had the basic percepts up front instead of burying them in here.
Well, actually, so some of those general sort of preambles that are in the beginning of this draft again are something that's new and wasn't in the regs that we've approved. And I think for me, at least, when we were going through those, I was saying that I thought they repeated what's in the back here. The way it's set up with it in the back is similar to what's in the state regulations.
Oh, so you want to keep it in the back and get rid of it from the front? That's
what I was thinking, yeah.
All right.
Just to make it similar to the way the state does it, you know? Because this, for the example, this section on bank is very similar to what you see in the state regulations, the preamble and the definition and everything. So, what else was I gonna say? I think that was my only change in the bank section. Does anybody have anything else?
I had a question. In 1.4.4, sort of, I don't know whether this is arbitrary. When a project is proposed to alter greater than 10% of the length of a bank or 50 linear feet, whichever is less on a single lot. I guess I don't understand the thinking here. Maybe we have a 50-foot lot and that's fine, but if you have a 75-foot lot, all of a sudden you're subject to not being able to do something without doing a wildlife study. And for the commission, I'm not entirely understanding the value of these piecemeal wildlife studies. It seems to me that if we want a wildlife study that's going to be of value in the ecosystem of Lake Wyola, that one tiny piecemeal evaluation done this year and one done 3 years later, 4 doors down, and one done, I'm not sure what we're creating that we think is beneficial to the resource.
It's a good question. I believe this is also in the state regs.
The specific linear thing is in the regs.
The
That's where that
10%
comes
of the
from.
length or 50 feet.
It just, you see what I'm saying though?
I do.
It doesn't make any sense to me as a biologist to think, oh, we've just done something important because we didn't see that important snake or whatever the hell.
I think the other thing is, if I'm not correct, when you look at this, when a project is proposed to alter greater than 10% of the length of a bank or 50 feet, whichever's less, if the lot frontage is 50 feet or 40 feet, 10% would be 4 feet. So if you're altering 4 feet,
exactly.
I mean, I'm not sure you need the or, given the size of the frontage on the lake.
Well, but this is for streams in general. This is bank for, so the 50 obviously refers to larger projects, much larger projects where you would be impacting larger amounts than the small lots at the lake. Because this is just for bank in general, which is for, you know, intermittent and perennial streams also.
Wait, and you were saying, Beth, that this was in the state reg as well. Is that correct? We're
Yes.
reiterating that. So I, to me, we could argue whether or not we need to reiterate what's already in the state regs, but I don't have an issue with this one. I did have a question on another one before this, but I don't know if we want to continue on 1.44.
Yeah, did we answer your concerns, Jan?
Kind of not. So if I'm looking at a waterfront that's 50 feet, is it or 50 feet, 10%, or is it 50 feet?
It's 10% or
is it
50
10%
feet.
of something that equals 50 feet?
So you've got to, are you going to impact the entire 50 feet? If you, let's see, which a project is proposed to alter greater than 10% of the length of a bank or 50 linear feet of a single lot. So if you've got 50 feet of bank, are you impacting more than 5 feet? That would be the 10%. Or if you're impacting more than 50 feet on any particular lot. So it's all about how much are you impacting, right?
Yeah. Is it me having the math problem? So, so 5 feet or 50 feet, they're equivalents?
If you're altering greater than 10% of the length of the bank, so you've got a 50-foot bank, and say you impact, right, basically more than 5 feet, you got to do the wildlife habitat study.
So if you're impacting 49 feet, you don't have to do it.
No, you do. You just.
No, it's,
If-
yeah,
if
it's whichever.
10% of the bank or 50 feet. So if you have a 500-foot bank,
Yeah.
then 10% of that would be a lot higher. So what they're trying to say is, once you hit 50 feet, you do it no matter what.
Yes.
Otherwise, you do 10%.
Exactly.
Okay. I'm
Yeah.
slow.
It's hard to imagine. It's hard to
I've
imagine
seen
a
that
site where
done
you'd be doing
differently, but
50
okay.
feet. Yeah. Yep. But I will confirm that that is in the state regs. There's definitely a version of that in the state regs.
And
I'll
there,
just
and there's no
confirm.
wiggling around when so I don't know how recently it was done, but I think there was a wildlife study done around the perimeter of the lake, for example. And that wasn't accepted as an answer for anybody, even in a short time frame. You know, so there was a whole wildlife study done, but then when you get down to your 50 feet, it didn't work. That doesn't make sense to me. Maybe I'm just being
And I
picky
think the
here.
question is to ask somebody who would do one of these wildlife studies, whether doing one on 4.9 feet has value.
Well, yeah,
That's the threshold question. That's really what we're asking.
Exactly. And it might, if you happen to find the nest of whatever the heck you were looking for, but odds are it wouldn't.
Yep.
Oh my God.
But that may be beyond us because it might all be in the state regs. So,
All right.
we're leaving it. We're
If it's in the
moving
state
on.
regs, then so be it.
Moving on. Freshwater wetland.
Hey, can we go? Sorry to move on by moving back, but I did have one question.
Oh yeah, you had a question. What was your question?
For 1.435. The
roads. Oop.
1.4.3.5. And I was just wondering, like, a lot of this seems to be pretty measurable things. I don't know, was this was added here too, was it not? This is all new.
Yep.
I mean, there's a lot that could go into breeding habitat or escape cover or food. I'm just wondering for regulations and definition, and we're talking about this capacity of this. I mean, I could see that being a little ambiguous or difficult to define.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know what these things are, but it gets into what wildlife or what fisheries we're talking about, and I don't know if that and the capacity. And so the rest of these are physical measures and easier, I think a little easier to define, but I just wanted to raise it and see if this had some rooting in the state wetland regs. I don't think it does, but
Yeah, I'm thinking not for these, for some of the 1.4.3 stuff either. I should go get my regs. They're upstairs.
I mean, I I'm a wildlife biologist, and I love the idea of we want to make sure we're not diminishing that. I love what I think of as, this is dealing with vegetation and disturbance, and there might be other ways of getting at this that are more measurable or understood. But
Mm-hmm. Yep, I agree with the sort of question of that being defined, being able to define it or get data to support it. I can go up and get my state regs and we can check if these two things are in this section, if that would be helpful.
or maybe we just flag it, just in the interest of time, we could flag it and come back. When we do the final, I think just to see where that is, or maybe there's a better way of writing this that might be a little more clear.
Okay, I flagged it as another one to look, compare to the state regs and see what it says, and we'll
Great,
talk about
thank
it a
you.
little bit more. Sure. Freshwater wetlands.
Section. Oh, you took out all the 6-paragraph stuff there? In 2.1.2?
2.1.2, yeah.
No, oh no, it's. I'm sorry. If you look at the bottom of 6.1.2 where it says 6-paragraph bogs, 9th paragraph. If that changes in the statute, you're gonna have to redo the regs. And so I was wondering why it mattered referencing the paragraphs.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't clear to me that it added any legal requirements, and so does it just put us in a place if they rearrange the paragraphs or part of them in 131, do you have to go back and change your regs?
Could we just say that it's as defined in the Massachusetts regulations?
Well, what it says is groundwater and surface water regime and vegetative community that occur in wetland meadows, swamps, and bogs as specified in the Wetlands Protection Act. But then it goes on to name the paragraphs.
Right, and I apologize. My question, Donna, was
Sorry.
can we just cut it short at that as specified in the Wetlands Protection Act and not reference the paragraphs?
Yeah, I don't know why the paragraphs are referenced.
I'm fine with that.
Make it easier for readers because the section 40 is so long, but
I agree. It's always best to just refer to the regs as updated. You can even put in that.
Right, as amended.
Assessments by, I don't care if you guys, we can take that out if you don't like it.
But it's as amended.
As amended, perfect. Okay, great. All right.
We kind of have a similar issue in 224 and 225. And 223. It might just be, go back to state reg instead of blah, blah, blah. If they change vernal pool in Article 3 and it turns out to be in Article 4 next time,
Yeah, I think I was okay with all this stuff.
Can I ask you, Beth, going back to 2.13, where just the definitions,
Yep.
where it talks about ice, is that a standard definition? It talks about standing water, and the rest of it made sense to me. I was just, the ice part was, there are potentially lots of things covered in ice that may not be wetland.
I don't want to have to scroll back up.
Sorry, I didn't. catch you before you scroll down.
But I can read it. Freshwater wetlands also include areas where groundwater, flowing or standing surface water, or ice provide a significant part of the supporting substrate for a plant community for at least 5 months of the year, such as a hillside seep and areas of emergent and submergent plant communities. Also include areas where groundwater.
Not sure what ice dependent plants we have growing 5 months out of the year at Shutesbury, but I don't know. It just
Yeah.
seemed to me to be a little confusing because I know you could have things that are covered in ice that are not wetland.
Yeah, no, I agree. Mhm. Yeah, we can probably just remove that ice part from that and just leave it as is. Okay. Okay, thanks. Moving down to what areas, Jan, were you looking at?
We run into the same thing. Whoops. Yeah, we run into the same thing as we discussed before in 223, 224, and 225, just specific pointers that might change.
All right, so 223 Springs.
And so go down at the end, it says in Article 3, maybe just dump Article 3 or something. Or the whole last sentence.
Resource.
Is that Article 3 of your regulations?
Yeah, I think that's just referring to Article 3 of these regulations.
My mistake.
Was there another spot? Oh, it's right there.
Well,
yes.
they're the same
Article.
thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just make sure in your final go through that you just check back with those numbers to
Yeah.
make sure that they're
Yeah.
actual.
Yep.
So many times that gets lost in the final review.
All right, so let's see. So while I've been looking through this, I've also been taking a quick glance at the latest version that Miriam sent us. She sent us another version of this in November. In fact, I think she sent one in September and then she updated it. I don't know. There was 2 more versions, and I went and like, so this 241 where there's just like a typo kind of thing, that did get fixed in the more recent version. So I feel like our final version will have that change. It's just a typo. Let's see, otherwise impairing portion of said resource area, I think it is what that's supposed to say. But I'll confirm that with her final version. And I mean, if we agree, then that's fine. Shall not destroy, alter, or otherwise impair any portion of said resource area. All right. Okay, so I have an issue with this 243, the limited project provisions, which the limited project, this statement 100% needs to be in our regs, but why that it's stuck in the middle of freshwater wetlands doesn't really make sense to me. I'd like to move it into the general provisions section, because it's just referring to limited projects, which are really important in the state regs. And it's great that we have this and we need it, but I just think that it should go there if people agree with that.
The other thing I would point out is I found a lot in these is that the limited project provisions in 310 CMR 10 shall apply under this bylaw. These are the regulations. And throughout the regulation, at least in parts of them, they refer to it sounds like you're inside the bylaw, not the regulations for the bylaw. So you just
Mhm.
need to watch, because that occurs frequently.
We change it to the,
Exactly.
yeah, okay. All right, so we'll move that to the general provisions section. Not right now, but when I go through, I will move it. In 245, we're basically saying that we'll allow impact to wetlands up to 5,000 square feet when the area is replaced 1-to-1, right? That's what this is saying. And I feel like we need to say 1-to-1 because there's commissions that do 2-to-1. So this is basically saying, and this will happen, you know, people will want to impact a resource area and then they'll look to these regulations and say, okay, I'm impacting 20 square feet of a wetland. How much do I have to mitigate? What's the square footage that I need to mitigate? And all we have in here is, it says that we allow it when it is replaced in a manner to ensure blah, blah, blah. I feel like there has to be a little length, something like replace, and again, I'm not good at writing these things, where is replaced, should we just say 1-for-1? In a manner to ensure, or
Where the
replace,
area is replaced 1-to-1
yeah, 1-to-1.
in a manner to ensure that replacement. In
I
a
like that.
ratio of 1-to-1,
You could, yeah, you could do this too. I've seen that in
a
regulations.
1-to-1 ratio.
Replace.
Can I ask that, like, for replacement math?
In a
This is
1-to-1 ratio.
this is wetland creation,
Yes, this
and
is what we're requiring.
right. And well, I think when I read this, I wasn't reading it necessarily that it was 1-to-1. I was reading it that that this is it, they're leaving it subjective to say that depending on what's being lost and how it's being replaced, that we would have to evaluate the functions and values of that wetland, and which makes sense to me. And I know a lot of mitigation has similar language in it. I don't know if it makes sense to spell out more specifically, like if where I've seen like the 2-to-1 or other things are like if it's not a high quality, if it was a really high quality wetland habitat that's being lost, it's being replaced with some acreage of wetland habitat that's not especially high quality, that then you would need more of it to make up for the functions and values being lost. I think that was what was intended here. I don't know of a better way of
Do you want to
clarifying it.
say in at least a 1-to-1 ratio to give you some flexibility, so that if it's 20 square feet and you know that 20 square feet isn't going to be replicated, it's going to be meaningless, that you can make it 100 square feet because that has much more success, or like you said, if it's a really qualitative wetland, that they need to replicate it by more than 1-to-1 to get the same quality and build that quality up. So
I like that.
all right.
Yeah,
Okay.
there was that University of Massachusetts study, I think it was 10 to 15 years ago, where the majority of replicated wetlands did not survive, and did
Yeah,
not get that replication. So oftentimes municipalities will ask for a 2-to-1 or something like that.
Right.
yeah, Amherst does 2-to-1. Um, And I like the at least. I do think something has to be in here because this again is where people are gonna look for that. You know, if you're a consultant and you're working for somebody and you're like, I'm in Shutesbury, I'm impacting this much, what do I have to do? They're gonna look right to the regs and they're gonna say, am I producing something that, am I doing 1-to-1 or am I doing 2-to-1? What am I doing? So I like having in at least 1-to-1 ratio. That gives them somewhat of an idea and maybe puts a question in their head of what does that mean at least, and they can keep reading or call and ask, you know, that's good.
Do you like at least 2-to-1 better, Beth? Is that more compliant
I
with
mean,
our
that's a
surrounding?
big question. What do we want to do?
I mean, I don't think, I mean, I'm with you. I don't think it's unreasonable. I think that is an industry standard for the reasons that Bob had laid out. But
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we go 2-to-1.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think we have to vote on it, but okay, I like it. I like the motion. All right, so do we get rid of the at least then? We can just do,
I know I'd like the at
least.
least 2-to-1.
You've got to get rid of the A. You keep leaving the A there. So it replaced in at
least 2-to-1.
2-to-1.
And at least 2-to-1 ratio.
A 2-to-1 ratio.
And at least a.
A.
That's where the A goes.
Yeah, that's where the A goes.
2-to-1 ratio. Okay. And then it gets into saying how they're supposed to try to build something that will survive. So, okay, that's good.
Cool.
What else did I have?
Hey, I have sorry, I apologize. I had a quick follow-up on that.
Sure.
Is there a inspection clause that these replicated wetlands have to be viable a year on?
Yes, that's all in here. Is it right in here? The design. Is it incorporating? So first they need to incorporate the standards in the Massachusetts Inland Wetland Repavation and Guidelines, which I'm pretty sure has stuff about monitoring. Must be submitted. Oh, and then it gets into the implement the wetland replication translocation methodology when they're transferring soils. I've never heard of that, but it sounds great. Type of wetland. Is it? We still need to answer that question, but I wanted to add to 248, the commission may issue an order of conditions permitting work that results in the loss of a portion of a wetland when it meets the criteria identified in here. What's in that 310 CMR 1055 is the identification that if it's less than 500 square feet, it's basically exempt. And I just felt like that should be listed. It's just like 2 bulleted items within that part of the state regs. And I just think we maybe need just think it'd be helpful if those details were actually in these regs. So again, if somebody's got a really small, you know, instead of them having to look through the regs and figure out what this says, it would just be a helpful little thing to have in there. So that's all right. I will add what 1055 4C says. to this section.
And you're saying that says, that 5,000, less than 5,000 square feet is exempt?
500.
500. So I would just add, or as amended in case that changes. Because once you put it in here, even if the regs go down to 250 feet or 200 feet, you've left it at 500. Now, I don't know if that matters, given the size, that's up to all of you, but if you put it in here and the regs change to smaller because of some study or something, you've still given people the 500.
Yeah, it won't let me type right now, but yeah, I agree. I'll put it over here. All right, let me see something.
Or you could put, or 500 square feet, whichever's less. And then they may have to go to the regs if they're, but they have a sense of what it is.
Yeah, no, I think I'll put, it's just a couple bullets. I'm still looking for what Bob's question was, sort of the like monitoring of a replication area. I feel like I know it's in the regulation somewhere because I saw it, but I don't see it in this section. But all right, well, we'll keep looking for that because that we want that in there, that description of how you determine whether it's successful or not.
So just put a note next to 2.4.5 that replication success to make sure something gets in there.
Yeah. And then, so where are we? That was 248. All right, so that's the end of freshwater wetlands. Now we're in the vernal pools.
This was where we said we were gonna stop. Do you think we should stop?
Up to you guys. I actually had no changes to the vernal pool section. But yeah, if you guys haven't had a chance to look at those sections yet, maybe we stop.
Either that or it's gonna be really fast for no comments.
Yeah. Yeah, we can stop. I think it would be a good idea to have just like a special meeting just to try and finish up these regs. I know it's holidays, so that's kind of rough. But let me look at my phone.
Now, are we allowed to have in-person meetings in a building that's not ADA compliant?
Are you talking about town hall?
No, I was thinking about inviting you all over and we just sit around the couch and we knock it out. and I'm not joking.
I think we can do that. I can look into that. That would be great. That would be a lot of fun. I don't think it has to be ADA compliant.
You do it by Zoom?
Well, it'd be fun to get together. I mean, well, it's not open meeting. I suppose that's not something we
Yeah, you
can.
got to deal with the open meeting law. That was my concern.
Yeah. It has to be, so yeah, like if we all
You'd-
got
you'd have
together
to-
and
you would
had a
have to
computer there.
broadcast from Bob's couch.
Could,
Then you could do it.
we could, but yeah, it would have to be a meet,
Let
if,
the
you know,
public
if
be
we're
there.
all getting together, if we have quorum, then we have to post it as an official meeting,
Sure, sure.
which we can do. Um, that is an idea, but let's just also just look at dates quickly. So I'd say December's probably out, considering it's, well, I mean,
If you want me there, December's out.
okay,
I'm leaving the 19th and won't be back till the 30th, so.
like next Tuesday, the 17th.
I,
What are people's schedules looking like? Is there a time between now and January 9th that we could do this, just to have a meeting? We'll post it and everything, and it would just be for going through the regs.
Next Tuesday, unfortunately, is my Concom meeting.
Ah. All right, I can't do the 18th or the 19th. And then the next week's Christmas and New Year's. So again, I guess the next one would be January 2nd. It's a Thursday. So we would meet the 2nd and the 9th. But the 2nd would just be for the regs.
I could do that.
That sounds good to me.
do you want me there, Beth?
If you'd like to be, would you want to come to Bob's house?
Sure. You got to figure out a way to have the public in that one.
Right, so what can you just like, like put a computer with a camera on a table?
I think I have to look at the new regulations around open meeting and whether you can have the board in a place and not invite the public in. Do all Zoom, or you can certainly do it at town hall. I think there's even provisions for a hybrid now, but I don't know that there's provisions for an in-place for the full board with the public only attending by Zoom.
Does seem a little different, doesn't it?
I'll
Alright,
be out of
well,
town, Beth, on the 2nd, so I won't be joining the couch gathering there, but I think I could call in
you
on
could
the
zoom in.
2nd. I think so.
Okay. All right, well, we'll figure that out. Thanks for the invite, Bob, but it might be challenging.
Okay.
It might just be easier to zoom it.
It's not ADA compliant, but it's comfortable and there are treats.
Yeah. Nice view of the lake. All right. Well, that sounds good. So we'll pick up where we're at with vernal pools.
At what time?
On the 2nd. Is 7 best for everybody, or want to meet earlier so we finish earlier, like 6?
Either would work for me.
Yeah, I think doing it earlier and I think limiting it to, like, if we spent like 2 hours doing it, I think that would be as much as I could get away with there on the 2nd.
Okay. 6 to 8 p.m. on the 2nd. All right. That sounds great. I'm gonna stop sharing. All right. I suppose at this point we could, I hate to not say, take any public comment on what we just were doing, because the public seemed very interested, so thought I would just throw that out there. But good that there's not. Right, so motion to adjourn,
So motioned.
second.
I'll second.
Okay, Douglas,
Aye.
Khan,
Aye.
Rowan,
Aye.
and Wilson, aye. Thank you, everybody. This was a very long meeting, but we accomplished a lot.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Night, everybody. Have a wonderful holiday.
Yeah, have good holidays. Yeah. Thanks. Good night.